20 minutes about roads, which in the UK are utterly crap. Hello, and welcome to episode 22 of the Collecting Addicts Podcast. It's very sunny outside, but we are inside. First subject, summer events. Where do you want to go with your friends in your car to see people, to see motor cars, and to remind yourself that you're part of the wider car community? Where are you going to go, Chris Cooper?
Well, Neil's going to talk about Le Mans, and I've got something to say about Le Mans.
Yep.
Come to that in a minute. Festival of Speed, or Festival of Greed, as some have called it.
Or Festival of Tweed.
So for about 1 million years, I ignored it. And I ignored it because I thought, oh, it's just all commercial and it's a bit too much, and I'll get frustrated not being on the hill or the track. And about 2 or 3 years ago, Finn and Cam, my boys, said to me, "You ever been to Festival of Speed, Dad?" I said, "No, I never have." And he said, "How can you not have been to Festival of Speed?" I said, "I've kind of always avoided it." So we bought tickets for 20, which was then COVIDed, and went in 21. And I'm hooked. I'm totally hooked. In fact, this year, I think we're going on 3 days. It's just the proximity and the diversity and the range of stuff you can see and hear. There are mentalists everywhere. Nick Swift chucking that mini clubman up the hill, the McMurtry, or the McCar as I called it, the McMurtry Sperling thing going up the hill last year was just
impressive,
extraordinary. So it's just, I mean, I do it as kind of a punter. I don't do it like Neil would do it. But it's just fantastic. So it's a bit late to plug it because it's fully sold out. I think it has been for some time. But just, if the recently converted to the most evangelical, because I had always avoided it. I don't have snooty about it, but now I just think it's wonderful. So I'm counting the days. I think it's just lovely. And the people you can see, I mean, just one name at random, Richard Leeds, Porsche factory driver. Last year, he was driving that electric Cayman thing. Got a bit overshadowed by the McMurtry Sperling thing. But in its own right, if that hadn't been there, everyone would have been talking about it. Second fastest up the hill. And just at the end of the Sunday afternoon, Richard was back at those tents in the paddock thing you have there. Nobody in the way. Come up and say, "Richard, really, really nice to see. What an amazing car. Tell me about it. Tell me about Le Mans this year," because he obviously won the last GTE Pro race last year. Just an amazing way. So for that access and the diversity of people, cars, everybody there enjoying anything four and two wheels. Yeah, it's just, I could go on. I think it's just a wonderful, wonderful event. Take it at face value, and it's wonderful.
I also think it shows how open-minded this podcast is, because we're promoting Goodwood's Festival of Speed at the moment. We just received a letter telling us not to hand out free Collecting Cars water in the car parks this year because we tried a bit of guerrilla marketing last year. But Goodwood have said no. But Goodwood, we're still happy to promote your events, and there's no hard feelings here whatsoever. And I won't turn up in Collecting Cars branded pajamas and walk around.
They can't tell you what you're not allowed to wear. Just you're not going to be giving out any free water.
I might go naked with henna collecting cars written all over my bits.
Yeah, I'd like to turn up. I'd like to turn up in Collecting Cars gear, but I haven't got any.
It's in a box just over there.
Yeah. What?
Can you imagine Chris at a fancy dress party, butt naked with a string coming out of his bottom? He goes a conker, wouldn't you?
I have to say, Max Chilton is a mate of mine, and we were sort of on a little WhatsApp group, and his build up to that record run.
Yeah.
And I have to say, even though we were sort of winding him up and maybe making him even more nervous than we should, it was so big balls. You know, that thing is crazy, and he really nailed it. So we were all very
you should
ask
him this. I read somewhere he didn't actually take what Monkey and I would see as a conventional line, because it's just so fast in the way that the suction worked.
You don't need to.
The crown of the road, he just kind of like drove on the camber or down, so didn't you have to even do a line? It's just...
No, but you don't. Clearly, I'm right out of my comfort zone here, but you have to be very careful with that car, and we can maybe get Max on as a guest, and he can tell us all about it. But if you hit the apex and the little skirt lifts up on the side, you lose bloody suction, and then it all goes pear-shaped. So you've got to be very careful with
you drive to the width that gives you the maximum contact between the bottom and the car on the road.
That's a better way of telling what I'm saying.
But it's but I've driven that Cayman thing that Richard Leeds drove up. That That's got two modes, 800 and 1100. And when you put it into 1100 horsepower mode, it bloody hurts. It's really
is that the underpinnings of a Mission X?
Yes.
It's probably,
it is Mission X with a bit, and then it's with a Cayman body on it. It's a very impressive thing. Neil Clifford, tell us about your trip.
I have to say, I was disappointed with that bloody Mission X. I mean, it's just put 200 grand on 918s, isn't it?
Yeah.
Honestly, it's a bit ugly, isn't it, on the front? Even though we're not allowed to criticize Porsche on this podcast, but I was like, oh, apart from the color, which brown is the new green, isn't it? I was a bit like, oh dear.
The electric hypercar doesn't really sell.
Who's gonna spend 2 million quid on an electric car?
Yeah, I thought it looked all right, but I'm with you with the
front's a bit ugly.
Did you?
I'm sure we can find an alter ego in our 2-car garage that will spend 2 million quid on an electric car.
Yeah, no, I'm sure, but no, it's all about the 918. That's the one.
Look, Neil Clifford, shut up about electric cars. We're not interested. We want to hear you talk about Le Mans. We want to know what it was like, what the sights, the sounds, what car you went in, why you chose that car, all that stuff. Come on.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it's my Glastonbury. It is the Glastonbury of car events, isn't it? I've been going off and on, mainly on since '89. I missed the last year of the pits when Jaguar won '88, but I was there in '89. I think was Mercedes, and then pretty much every year ever since. So it is my mecca, and it's such a wonderful. I mean, I begin to get butterflies the afternoon before. That nervous energy that you get when you're like, oh, I hope it just goes right. I hope I don't forget my passport or my driving license, or I haven't got the code for the flexi bloody pass at Europe.
Yeah, that's the pain, that bit.
You get nervous, or am I going to get a puncture? But then the morning, you're up at 4 a.m. even though you set your alarm for 5 a.m. You're lying in bed waiting to get going, really. And then you meet. There's only two of us went. I'm down to one friend now for Le Mans. Normally there's about 6 or 7 of us, but we were down to 2 of us went, obviously in separate cars. You never want to go in a car with someone else, do you? So you take 2 cars and you meet at the little Flexi Cafe at 7 a.m., even though you're booked on the 9 a.m. So you're always about 2 hours ahead. And it's the sort of if you know thing, isn't it? You're driving down even on the M25 and on the M20, and you see all the guys with the stickers, and you're giving the thumbs up, and it's so much camaraderie. And then you get through the tunnel, and you're just nervous again that you're gonna curb your wheels. Oh. It's another nervy thing, isn't it?
You've got to go up on the walkway.
Yeah, you're like, oh my God, I'm going to ruin my wheels because they haven't put you in the wide bit. You're in the normal bit.
Go up on the pathway.
And then you're like, fuck, I need petrol straight away. So there's a lot of nervous energy going on. It's that sort of fear of variables, really, isn't it? But we often have, we tend to like our little routines and our little loops, and you get out of that and it gets a bit nervous. But once you get there and you go to the clean service stations of France as opposed to the shitholes that we've got, and you've got nice coffee, and then you've got your little blipper, and you get nervous about your blipper that you've bought, to open the motorway thing. And sometimes it tricks you, doesn't it? You drive up to it and the fucker doesn't open, and then you're like, oh my God, and you're wiggling it out the window. But anyway, the first sign of that Le Mans sign, I think it's just north of Alençon, when you see Le Mans, and you thought, I'm in it now. I'm not going to break down. I've got my euros. I haven't lost my passport. This is just going to be bloody fantastic. So it's, the race was magic. There was a Ferrari-sponsored squirrel. Did anyone see that?
A real squirrel?
Yeah.
No, the one that smashed into the Toyota, you mean?
Basically, Toyota hit a squirrel. And it's the reason why Ferrari won, because it put Toyota back about 4 minutes. And I'm sure that this was an Italian squirrel that was sent out onto the Porsche curve.
A suicide mission, basically.
Yeah, because it did. And if you look on the quotes by the driver, it was a very large mammal that might even not have been a squirrel. The other interesting bit, and I can talk for hours if you guys want to know more, every car was run on fuel that was made out of grapes. Did you see that?
I've
So
seen
it was Le Mans was every single car, all 62 cars were basically run on old French wine, for the environment, which is bloody magic, isn't it?
Yeah.
Really bloody good. The race was amazing.
Make enough noise about that.
The first
No, I
6 or
didn't know that
7
either.
hours, I'm sure we all watched it. It was like a 24-hour sprint. The rain came just at the right time. There was rain on certain parts of the circuit, no rain on the other bits. All the cars were spinning. There was loads and loads of drama. And I'm just sort of, hence my cap that's a bit small for my head. I think everyone's chuffed for Ferrari,
You don't think it was a fix?
No, of course not. Italians wouldn't
Oh,
do that today.
Chris. Oh, Chris.
Oh, Chris, so cynical.
Oh, Chris.
But if you'd said to me at the beginning of the year, that Ferrari wouldn't win a Grand Prix by the middle of the summer, but it would win the Nürburgring 24 Hours and Le Mans, I wouldn't have believed you.
No.
That was not the story I would have anticipated.
The absolute untoward consequences, I keep saying, of the cost cap. You can't spend the money in your Formula One car. You're not going to let other people steal all of your engineers. Guys, we need a project. Well, let's go back to Le Mans. Let's win it. I mean, did you notice John Elkann himself in the Ferrari garage smiling?
I was lucky enough to wangle my way into the Ferrari Casa, which was, you just don't want to do it anymore in a normal way because you're there with your espressos and your little, should we have some carbonara or maybe a little bit more parmesan and, amazing view.
Be honest though, Neil, I've heard stories about what it costs to buy into that hospitality. Did you get any truth for the numbers? Because I've heard it's outrageous.
I think it's about $8,000. I obviously didn't pay that. It's not what you know, it's who you know in life.
Oh, absolutely.
Certainly with a man with 1 O level. That's all I've got.
But do you think they'd come back with a respect for the history of the place and the knowledge that they've probably underperformed there over time, or did they arrive with a body language of this is a bit of a side hustle for us? We're almost too big for Le Mans, and you should be grateful to have us. What was the vibe?
What do you mean, Ferrari or the?
Yeah, Ferrari.
No, I think they were uber desperate, super keen to win.
Wow.
Massive effort, massive focus.
Yeah, the people running the car, AF Corsa, they've done Le Mans for years and years and years. And it was interesting that they picked essentially GT drivers. James Collado, British driver, had done really, really well in single seaters, had figured an F2, and then those breaks never happened. And he's been in AF Corsa his 5th, 6th year in a row. He's won a trophy at Le Mans. So they didn't go the way others have gone, put GT drivers in there. And I think that lot took it all really, really seriously. The BOP thing.
I think they were super.
Yeah.
They had 2 belts on and 2 pairs of braces.
To be clear, it's not about they taking it seriously. Ferrari, when it turns up to something outside of Formula One, can often come across as looking like they think they're a bit too good for that particular form of motorsport. And I wanted to know whether you got the sense that they had reverence for the fact that
reverence. Yeah,
correct.
There was massive respect for the history of the thing. There was posters everywhere about the history. And, was it 1965, maybe their last win? 50 years, certainly, since they were on pole, I think. It was massively important, massively. Charles Leclerc was there.
Trying not to cry.
The CEO guy, whatever his name is, he was there. Everyone was there. Alcan, all the Alcans. I saw
the Collecting Addicts podcast was there.
Yeah, exactly. I was representing Collecting Addicts. But it was, the big question really, good for Ferrari, is Porsche. There'll be a big board meeting with Penske, won't there? Because
what a shocker.
That's 75 years. There were posters everywhere. The livery was wonderful. The design of the car was fantastic. And then, getting mullered by Cadillac.
Yeah.
And
they've had enough wins there. I'm sure we all would have gone into it wishing Ferrari a win.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think everyone did. You sort of felt it, that everyone, the French wanted Peugeot and they led the race for a bit, but the Porsche fell out pretty quickly. Cadillac was amazing. There was that Jenson Button NASCAR that basically everyone cheered on every single lap because the thing looked so cool. The Chimera, the Camaro, looked so cool, sounded so cool. It was such a, it is.
What about the BOP, Chris Cooper?
So there are those. So BOP, balance of performance. I guess most people watching, listening to this will know what that is. It's an attempt by regulators and organizers to level the playing field in those kinds of motor racing where you're bringing generally production-based cars to the party, where there might be big differences between the cars. So when, Monkey the car we drove a Bentley in the World GT or European GT Championship a few years ago. There's no way a Bentley should really be beating a McLaren 650S or a 720S. The BOP is a way of playing with the parameters, weight, aero, power, fuel tank size, all those kind of things, to say everyone's got a chance. So for GT racing, it works quite well because it attracts lots of manufacturers in, which stuff we used to do did. There is an argument that says in the hypercar, which is meant to be sort of a prototype, but it's sort of prototype that we might be able to sell to other people because they don't cost all the money in the world, that is there a place for BOP in the hypercar? And shouldn't we just let them, here's the rules, see who does best? And I thought Toyota on the day and in the afternoon actually behaved with a lot of dignity and maturity, because you could see they were dying inside that a week before the race, whenever it was, the ACO said, we're going to tweak it a bit. Ferrari got a bit more weight. Toyota got a little bit more weight. And engineers in our audience will write on YouTube comments as to whether that made enough difference or not. Personally,
Chris, it was really, really tight.
I
wonder whether it made a difference,
Yeah, I mean, but 24 hours, you can't. I mean, that's the thing. The reality is, in 24 hours, there were so many issues. The Corvette that won in GTM had 2 laps in the pits. You can't predict. So my view is that the BOP has resulted in lots of manufacturers coming to the race. If you weren't in the Toyota team, you probably thought, actually, it's worked really, really well. So personally, as a spectator looking at it, I thought it was a fantastic race. Bit of rain always helps. So the philosophical, intellectual question, should BOP be a part of hypercar? You'd probably have to say yes. Otherwise, it gets like Formula One. Somebody wins, everybody gets bored and goes home. Because in sports car racing, people can go home.
But do you want to flip that round? Are we going to get BOP in Formula One?
No, I think see my flake.
You don't need it. You don't need it because you got DRS. Can I answer your BOP thing?
Don't need it.
I think first of all, we have to acknowledge that Toyota, as ever, when they go racing, are incredibly dignified. They don't allow themselves to come across with very, very emotional responses. And if a boot on the other foot, if Ferrari had received that diktat the week before about BOP, I think we would have a very different set of messages that are being presented.
I think it was the squirrel. If you do the study, it was the squirrel that did it.
It was Giuseppe stood down the main straight, lobbing a dead rabbit at the windscreen.
Yeah, I heard he had larger mammals as well for later in the race in case that one.
He did.
A polar bear being shot at the.
He was going to throw an eland.
Mr. Cooper, do you know why there isn't is it WEC? Why isn't there a 6 hour at Silverstone or something? It'd be lovely to go and see those.
There was the first year the 919 ran, there was a 6 hour. But just to answer that BOP thing, I'm not sure BOP matters so much in a 24-hour race. It's so attritional. And I think this is where sometimes you do want tortoise and hares. Actually, you do want cars of different speed and different performance. You want cars with big downforce, low downforce. And this is what creates the interest of the racing. They shouldn't be wheel to wheel like a long sprint race, which is what they kind of are these days. I want to see someone that can do an extra 3 laps because they've got an efficiency advantage in every stint against a car that's out there changing more often and going really fast, re-overtaking. I mean, there's an incredible lap on Instagram which does the rounds, and it's on YouTube as well, of the McLaren F1 versus the first year of the Porsche GT1, and their performance is so profoundly different that they are overtaking each other 4 times a lap. It's not dicing; it's the difference in the cars.
Yeah,
and I think I don't see the need for the BOP. I just, if someone's got a faster car, go ahead, because there's every chance you still won't win because someone might win with a more reliable car.
Yes. Did you see the Polish guy who won in LMP2 had his foot run over.
Yeah.
And broke his foot and didn't go to the hospital because he knew that he'd broken his foot and just carried on driving.
Would never let him out
They
again.
wouldn't let him out again.
Yeah.
Robert Kubica, who's obviously Polish, and was on that podium, but didn't get the winning drive. So that would have been a nice symmetry. But yeah, that was. And in GT we talked about it before. Michael Fassbender actually was back with Richard Leeds. And I really felt for him. He stuffed it in the Porsche curves, just lost it, and just that sort of just got away from him, and he just didn't get, and it just went backwards in. He must have been.
There was no corrective action on those front wheels. Sorry,
no.
He just went straight in.
He got a little bit on, but he's
just. It just felt for me that you were living in a history book for a weekend.
Yeah.
You know,
how was Neil? How was the general behaviour of the Brits over there? For
it was all good.
10, 15 years ago, it got a bit lively.
I wasn't, I have done 10 years in a tent in Arnage with the sort of beer walls and I'd had my locks on my 205 GTI stuffed with sausage meat. I've done all that, but I'm sure a bit of that was going on. But generally, everyone was just super optimistic, super positive, good to be there, good behaviour. I think everyone was chuffed that it was 100 years. I think everyone was pretty super pleased for Ferrari. There's not many people that are petrol heads that don't like Ferrari, is there?
No,
really.
No, I think that and the Nürburgring, incredible results for the team, and they won't make that much noise. And they'll still put more into Charles Leclerc doing his social media, beautiful photographs, and wearing an outfit before the next Grand Prix than they will promoting those two victories.
Charles was there. Charles was there the whole time from the night before, watching the whole race with his mates. They were, and he was in the whatever the bit is where all the mechanics are, where they're cooking all the food and all that, and he was in there. He was there the whole time. I think they were desperate to win, and I think bloody good for them, really.
Neil, the T-shirt that said he was wearing a T-shirt that said the short wheelbase is better looking than the 275.
Yeah,
if you like men.
Neil, he did say he wanted to race there one year, and somebody put quite a profound comment underneath saying the Formula One season now is so dense he'll never get that chance. And that is the one. I mean, there are many great pities about modern racing, but one of the things I used to love about racing was the fact that Stirling Moss could basically drive everything. So it could plan. It would be lovely to see a little, gap so that the top Formula One drivers could have a drive.
He might have a big gap soon.
Yeah. I mean, there is a gap. They're trying to stop the clash per se of Canada and that. And the point about social media and the Finnecam I've always mentioned this to me after Nürburgring and again last weekend is that the expansion of the coverage and the access to it and what people are seeing in TikTok and Instagram. Our sport, ironically, at a time of its greatest challenge and sustainability, is probably more eyeballs on it than any time ever before. Yeah. And that is a really, really good thing. And they seem, for young people, they're both 20. They're really, really optimistic about the sport. But people also think, crikey, I can see what's coming and I can't see the answer. And the people their age say to them, "You're into racing. You race cars. What? This is amazing. How have I never seen this before?"
Well, particularly if you can run your cars on wine.
Yeah, I'm going to look that up.
That's a massive paradox for me. Would you put it in the car or do you drink it? I mean, I
do both.
Yeah, do we?
In reverse order.
I think we've done quite a bit. We've done quite a bit of Le Mans there. Let's just have a little think about other events then. Obviously, we love a Collecting Cars coffee run, so have a look at the calendar, see what's around there. And anything at Bicester is of high quality. Can we agree on that? You go to Bicester.
The Flywheel this weekend.
Flywheel this weekend. Yeah.
So this will be out the day before that. So and it looks like it's gonna be nice weather. Myself and Ed won't be there because we're going somewhere else. But I think that's always a good idea. Foz Festival of Speed. I'm a little bit torn with it really. I for reasons of being the presenter of Top Gear, I do struggle with it a bit because you don't get much space. But the bits I love are when you go off into the doobies and you find the little ride and off-road motorcycle bike. I love anything to do with motocross stunts. I just sit and watch that all day long. I love those. And I do love some of the tech learning bits where you can take little people and they can have Andy Green talk about what it's going to be like when the rockets were cut in Thrust SSC or whatever it was called, Bloodhound, sorry. All that stuff I really love. But the supercar paddock and the
you can leave
all that shite. No, you can keep that.
Yeah, but you don't have to go there. It is a bit like Glastonbury. There's something that's gonna like your fancy.
And
that's right. Yeah, you've got Guns N' Roses on one stage, and you've got Billy Bragg in the tent. Do you know what I mean? You can do whatever you want.
But we've got so much coming up this summer with British Grand Prix, Silverstone Classic, Pebble Beach, Concours d'Elegance, Modena Oro, Salt Flats.
I think for me, of all of them, I've done the one that I want to do, which was Isle of Man. I'll reiterate, I went back for the senior and watched it on Saturday. Just before they start that race, I've never seen anything like that. The grid clears. The only people with the riders are their absolute closest, nearest and dearest. And they embrace each other or have their standard interaction before they race in a way that you don't in any other form of motorsport, because there is a sense that maybe not all of them are coming back. And a coldness sort of descends on the paddock. I've never experienced anything like it in my life. It's difficult to put into words. I'm probably not skilled enough with words to describe it to you, but it's humbling and it's unlike anything I've seen before. So I did this last week. Go to the TT. It's one of the best things you'll ever do. I would say for me that after that, the best event, and I know I've got at least one supporter here, would be Classic Le Mans, which I think if you like old cars, just like cars in general, the access is fantastic. The crowds are much smaller than the main race. It's got a slightly different vibe, a little less lobbing beer cans around. Neil, you're a huge advocate of that as well, aren't you?
Yeah, I am. Yeah. I've been to all of them, I think. Yeah. Oh, it's magic. You get right into the paddock. You can see every car. You've got 7 or 8 groups of cars from the 20s all the way through to the 80s. They each race for an hour and a half. They pile in, then the next group. So you see every car, every age of Le Mans winning car at every state of the day and night. That's the cool thing. Yeah. You're at Arnage watching lightweight E-types racing short wheelbases at night. I mean, or even 908s or 917s, or it is phenomenal.
Neil, that was the one thing, because Neil was sending us the kind of group WhatsApps, and that first evening when the lights came on, we all turned into, I certainly did, a 10-year-old with a Scale Xtrix that had sort of night, that had lights, and it's the way the cameras catch it. You see the prisms, you see almost the crucifixes of
you think you're Steve McQueen. You're totally back in the 70s.
It's so beautiful.
Yeah, and the smells, you've got the smells of the fuel and the sausages being burnt on the little, and you've got beer, and you just got this sort of French mix of loveliness.
I would say that other events worth looking at in the calendar are, if I think the 24 Hours Nürburgring can be a bit full on as a spectator event, the young timers and the older events. Yeah, there's lots of them at the Nürburgring. They're really worth visiting. You'll see.
I've got to go there. I've never been.
The young timer.
I'll come with you.
Amazing. Yeah.
Well, take the 456 manual.
We're going in the 456.
Yes.
We are. We're all going in manager's 456. We're going to put a baby seat. I'm going to go in the baby seat in the middle at the back.
For me, the best month is September, because in September it kicks off with Hampton Court Concourse. I know people can be a little bit pissy about static events, but actually it's the most beautiful setting. You've got the most beautiful cars in the world. It's very relaxed, very cordial. Just go there on a Saturday morning, get a little coffee, wander around for a couple of hours and bugger off. It's lovely. And then you've got Revival. You've got Revival almost the week after. And then you've got loads of sort of slightly more oily fingernails and warm pie events like Cop Hill.
Yeah.
I went up the hill for the first time in an old banger last year. I always go, but I've never had the bottle to go up the hill, but I did. And it's lovely. And it's real grassroots, oily finger motorsport. It's really, really, so September's always nice weather in the UK, isn't it? August can be a bit bloody shite, frankly. But September you can do something lovely every weekend of September.
Spa 6 hours as well. That's that has the best single paddock, or two paddocks as there are, because there's upper garage, lower garage.
So many cars.
That has the best collection of cars you'll ever see in one place. You know, Ferrari 512s, 917s, a lot of stuff. Is
that September?
Younger.
When is that?
It's normally the week or 2 weeks after Goodwood Revival.
It starts at sort of 6 o'clock ish and goes into the evening. So most of it that time of year is darkness, and it's just atmospheric. People
roll out the big McLaren Can-Ams there, so 800 horsepower with long trumpet MAFs and things coming out of La Source and going down to Eau Rouge. You've not seen anything like it.
No, we need to go there. Yeah. We actually need to get a Collecting Addicts minibus.
Also, we need to get a collecting. We need to compile a Collecting Addicts diary of shit you need to go and look at.
Yeah,
calendar.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
We need that. So we need that bus from Scooby Doo.
And what we need, Ed, is a suitable car that we could enter in these events that each of us could drive and showcase to people what they're like. I think
a 512M or something like that, or
something like that. You can choose, but yeah.
You also need some teamwear so that we all look like we're part of a club.
Yeah, I know. God, if only there was branded wear of collecting cars.
Shoes. We need the right shoes.
Man, you've already said on our group that you wouldn't wear it anyway, so don't worry about that. Here we go. So that's a very positive and very long intro to this week's event. Let's get much more negative. I'm putting a little wooden box down now, and I'm going to ask each of my fellow co-conspirators to stand up and have a massive whinge about the state of UK motorways and UK roads in general, which are absolutely dreadful at the moment. Every week there's a story about people suing their local council because their 21-inch rim on their Range Rover has been bent. I don't have that much sympathy for them, actually, but for most of us, they're too far gone. Ed would love it. What's it like in Fulham?
Well, you're also fucking miserable. I use the M40 and M4, and they're perfect. I don't seem to have a problem. Well, by the way, I have always chosen, I don't commute. So when people are coming into work, I go the opposite direction.
So you're telling me that the roads are smooth in your helicopter? Well, why does that have any use?
I never, if I run up to Bicester, there's nothing wrong with the M40 stretch from M25 to Bicester.
Yeah,
and I don't think there's anything wrong with the M4.
So in your research for this piece, all of you, do you think I'm going to ask you whether you have one particular piece of road that you think is so far beyond repair that you can't understand it? I'll nominate one. The exit, if you're heading eastbound on the M4, the exit of Membry Services, I reckon you could bust all four wheels at 60 miles an hour in a normal car.
Yeah,
it's like an off-road course.
Yeah,
this is a major service slip road leading onto a motorway. The repercussions of that are full.
Sounds like you need to plan your fueling better so you don't have to stop at that station.
Yeah, I'm partly, Ed, with you. I'll come to it I was in the Netherlands the other weekend when we were at Zandvoort, but I can top that Membry Services. We were at Snetterton the weekend. Cameron was racing there at Snet, and there's Jonathan Palmer spent a lot of money on the whole thing, but there's a slip road exiting the circuit going south back down the A11. And to say that it's had subsidence or it looks like something from the moon, there are some cars that just couldn't do it. I had to go sideways and diagonally raise the suspension. And I saw somebody who just drove out thinking it's a slip road. The car took off and landed straight into the cliff face of the other side of this crater. That was it. Gone. Dead. How has that? And we looked at it and said, how's it got that back? It's like they've tarmacked over a bomb hole with papier-mâché and dog hair and hope. I mean, it's just... So, yeah, there are some bad ones. Having said that, if you go to Belgium, I've had to drive through 4 countries to get to Zandvoort. And, well, one of them's not really a country, it's Belgium. Sorry, Belgium. And Belgium's falling apart. The roads around Amsterdam, the big difference is people make progress. Commuter time, middle of the day, evening, everyone's making progress, which is just as well because the roads are nowhere near as good as you think they should be. But I think, yeah, there are some shockers.
I think you don't realise, for me, I don't like being, actually, I sort of piss off my friends of being this sort of overly optimistic, everything's going to be better in the future guy. But so I don't like being negative, but when you spend 3 days in France on those incredible motorways that are all so clean, and there's always a man in a van trimming the bloody hedges and almost sweeping the bloody roads, and you go even into the service station, there's always a lady cleaning the loos.
Yeah,
it's all so neat and tidy. And then you get on that Eurostar and you want to sort of get home on a Sunday night and you drive out onto the M20. It's like fucking Caracas.
Yeah, actually,
it's a shithole.
I'll give you that.
There's a massive pothole next to the little Shell service station as you're getting onto the motorway when you come off the tube.
But there's dirty. There's tires on. It's like driving in Los Angeles. Suddenly,
bloody Brits everywhere.
Too many people. No lane discipline. I mean, the French. You have to. We can criticize the French for many things, but they have immense lane discipline. There's not so many of them on the road. There's the same population, twice the size of country. So I suppose we've got a bit of a challenge there. But it's like, it's untidy. You've got this stupid bloody smart motorway thing, which I know we've talked about that, so we can't talk about that again. Super bloody dangerous. You haven't even got any phone service. You're driving through France. You've got 4G or 5G, perfect. You get to bloody Tunbridge Wells, you got 3G if you're lucky. I mean, what's all that about? Somehow infrastructure. I know we're not in Europe anymore in that respect, so we need to blame sort of Boris and Cameron for that. But the French should run the motorways. The Italians should run, I don't know, cuisine. Maybe the Swiss run the airports. There's no better airport than Zurich Airport, is there? We should allocate jobs.
Yeah.
Get the Americans.
What the hell would you give us right now, though? What would you give us now?
You'd give us loads of things. You'd give us music, architecture, design, creativity,
racing teams,
humour. The Brits are good at lots of things. We're just not really that good at bloody infrastructure because it takes fucking 30 years to build a road.
The other thing about our roads, which doesn't get mentioned enough, is because we've spent so little. I always feel that if there's a solution for our road networks, it's always the cheapest. We find the cheapest we can, and then some contractor manages to make 7 billion out of one job.
Yeah.
But we are, in terms of drainage, our asphalt is the worst it has to be the worst in the world. There's those large sections of French autoroute where they have that top surface that's porous, and then it drains away, so it never floods. But if you're out on Sunday night when the clouds really were bursting around Birmingham, you just have to stop. I mean, there was one point where a cloud burst where I just thought to myself, I'm not carrying on here because the tyre cannot deal with this.
We used to have that.
In France that would happen.
We used to have that. There's a bit of the M40. I think it's sort of still there. The Stoke-on-Church cutting going west out of London, that downhill bit. It had two qualities. It was low noise. So you get onto it and it'd be like you're hovering, and it was porous. So all the water drained out. I suspect somebody worked out it was humongously expensive.
Yeah.
So we've gone back to cheap tarmac and a little bit of tar with grit done on the top because I
think one of the most random things experienced in my 7-8 years doing Top Gear is being in the middle of nowhere and coming across what is quite clearly a part of the Chinese Belt and Road Initiative, where they've just given a country a road that's of such high quality that the locals simply don't know what to do with it. Yeah. So I remember being in Ethiopia and just bashing our way down these tracks and coming across 30 miles with a little sign saying Chinese Belt and Road. They actually put the sign up saying the Chinese paid for it.
Wow.
And there's just people pushing trucks and goats on it. There's no need for the road whatsoever. And the really the sinister one is the one that goes over the Himalayas. So China has pretty much built a road that goes through the Himalayas now. And that road, you go for 3 days with these massive kilometer drops with rocks everywhere. And suddenly out of nowhere, there is an 8-lane motorway. And you go, where the fuck's that come from?
Wow.
And it's better than any road in the UK. There's no road comes close to it.
Used to be railways in sort of Southern Africa in the post-war period. It was railways, and now it's roads. Or the cricket stadium in Antigua is a bloody impressive the Viv Richards Stadium in the middle of the island. Yeah.
Am I allowed to nominate the whole of central London as the worst road?
Yeah.
It's just, and it's not only the potholes, it's not only the quality. There's another sort of very insidious aspect to it, which is the absolute lack of planning when anyone does any infrastructure change in central London that requires digging up a road. No one literally sits down and coordinates any of this shit. So you basically have 100 meters of whatever, another 100 meters of road that kind of works, and then another 100 meters of digging up. And it's almost as if the first job that the councils all got rid of were whoever it was, if there was such a job, that coordinated such things. So, you'll have a section chopped up because of water. 2 months later, the same section's being chopped up for high-speed internet. I mean, it's
100%, yeah.
Insanity. And, it actually, I run a small business, in entertainment. And I guess, what do we really want? I mean, I know what I really want. It would be lovely if people could get to work. Brackets on time would be nice, close brackets. Reasonable healthcare so that if they've got a hospital appointment or something, they can get their hospital appointment at a kind of decent time such that they're healthy for work. And I guess a bit of childcare would be really, really nice that everybody could afford. That's it. That's my absolute government wish list.
I think and some guns. We need lots of guns.
Yeah.
We need a good military. I mean, we should 4%.
Oh, that kind of gun. Oh, right.
Oh, yes.
That kind of gun.
I'm drawing this section
more aircraft carriers.
I'm drawing this to a close. We've been too negative for too long. So we're going to move. We're going to move to something uplifting now, because we've just whinged for 20 minutes about roads, which in the UK are utterly crap. We're going to move to early morning drives. What is it about getting into a motor car very early in the morning that always feels exciting? It feels like you're doing something that's a privilege. Chris Cooper, why do you like getting up early in the morning? Is it the journey? Is it the expectation? Is it the fact no one else is around? What is it?
It's all of those things. It's the nervous. It's the last thing you think about before you go to bed. And it's the first thing you think about when you have that sort of little bit, you wake in the middle of the night at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. So I'm down in Cornwall at the moment. I came down here about a month ago. And I quite often like coming down late at night because I like waking up here. But I thought I'm going to go early in the morning. And I was so excited. It was like night before Christmas. And there's that anticipation of, have I got everything planned here? Have I got my travel cup? I'm going to make my cup of tea because I love a cup of tea.
Prep, all about prep.
It's about prep. And it's that anticipation. So it doesn't have to be daylight when you start. But there's something about the world just feels better when you start the day earlier. And whether it's driving somewhere on a holiday or going to a work thing, a week, it doesn't matter what it is. It's that the day's opening in front of you. The road is opening in front of you. The sky is that wonder. Monkey, you and I know from 24-hour races. And I know before I was in motor racing, I did offshore yacht racing. And I can't tell you how uplifting, no matter how bad the race was. I get really badly seasick, which is not, I can tell you, a great characteristic to do long offshore yacht racing. But no matter how yucky I felt or how bad the weather, when you see on the bit of the horizon, the orangey bit starting, and it's just so uplifting. It's optimistic. It's the whole day's in front of you. You've got the world to yourself. And you can be by yourself.
One thing you said there, which is interesting, which I think is achievable in any motor car, is the sense of wonder.
Yeah.
And maybe just reminding yourself how lucky you are that you happen to be a bunch of atoms that ended up being a human being. Is that it doesn't matter if you've just won Le Mans, you're in a Le Mans, potential Le Mans winning Ferrari, and the sun comes up in your stint. That's a privilege. But if you're, driving the coastal road near Newquay and you're in a 2CV and watch the sun come up, as a human, you still respond the same way. There's still something about those colour changes.
It does.
The reds, the purples.
It's spot on. It's exactly the same. It doesn't have to be a fast car. I remember a few years ago towing our rib, 55 miles an hour. It takes a long time to get from Hertfordshire to Cornwall. And you start, because you want to get there in the morning. So you start when it's dark and the day starts to unfold. And suddenly there's still a whole day in front of you. And that's just such a wonderfully...
What time did you set off, Chris?
You start off about 4 o'clock in the morning. 4
wow.
5 o'clock in the morning. So after 5 o'clock feels like you've missed the moment somehow.
Yeah.
And you're thinking, when I get there, the day is just starting. Hopefully the tide will be in. There'll be a little cafe I can go and have my cooked breakfast. And the 2 guys I've gone down with, we'll sit there and we'll put the boat in the water and we'll park the trailer over there and we'll go and have a cooked breakfast. And then two mates who have helped me, they'll drive back up to Hertfordshire, and I'll just sit there and finish my breakfast, and it's just wonderful. So I think it's something. It's a free luxury.
Neil Clifford, what's your prep?
Free.
How do you
Mr. Tom
approach
Hartley
it?
Cars.
No.
Yeah. Oh, that's really funny. You know, I do. Yeah, it was probably a bit over the mark. I do a little thing at my old school in Portsmouth. Help the business students talk about, you know, their career and blah blah blah. And I always get asked, you know, give us some tips about you know, how did you make it and all of this sort of stuff. And I'm like, number one thing, get up early. The early people rule the world. And I think it's very true. And when I was thinking about this sort of early morning drive thing, it's basically my early morning drive every morning. I set my alarm at 4:47, which is the number of my house where I was born in Portsmouth. But I'm lying there at 4:42, you know.
Waiting for it.
Do I wait for the alarm to go off? Shall I turn it off now? Shall I get up now? Is the dog going to need a piss? You know, my brain is very active. Frankly, I've never had a good idea ever in my job after about 3 p.m. I might as well go home. But in the morning, all the shit that was yesterday is all turned into positive, all turned into action, all turned into ideas. I drive everyone mad at the office because I'm sort of Mr. 502 emails whilst I have my little 2 glasses of water and my little routine before I get into work. But the other important bit, and I moved out of London 10 years ago. Frankly, I wish I'd have moved further, so the drive was even longer. But we're about an hour. We're about an hour away. I'm an hour away. In fact, 47 minutes. I stop at a little place called Salvino, which we all need to go there. It's a beautiful, authentic Italian deli in Camden, and it officially opens at 7. But if you're in the inn club, you can go in at 6. And it's like one flew over the cuckoo's nest in there. So you've got Pete the plumber, you've got Marco the electrician, you've got David the clever lawyer, you've got Gianni the ambulance driver, you've got Rob the mad guy that does the parking tickets of Camden. And we all meet for like 20 minutes. And Alf, who's a Napoli baker, bakes 4 a.m. croissants and brings them down in his shopping trolley, and we all sit there and talk bollocks for 20 minutes, and then everyone disperses.
Yeah.
And it's this wonderful moment where you're meeting new people.
The days overlap.
Yeah, and you've got Eric the Frenchman that runs Filofax, and you've got all these lovely characters that you wouldn't have met if you were in your normal day-to-day life. And it's just brilliant. So I think get up early, go for a drive. I love my routine. We all love our routines, don't we? It's you're nervous when you're out of your routine. Even if you're on holiday, you think every 10 minutes you've lost your passport or your wallet or whatever. But yeah, morning drives every morning, magic.
Yeah.
Eric must have a tough job, Neil.
No, well, Eric does lots of little consultancy things. Eric's super cool. He's just ridden from Amsterdam to, I don't know, 200 miles up the bloody coast. He goes for bike rides with his son. He's a wonderful character. I buy him espresso cups from around the world because he collects espresso cups. It's just magic, isn't it?
Yeah, it's great. I always think that when I was doing more early mornings, I loved being self-employed and knowing that I could get a day's work done by midday, and anything else that was a bonus. I was getting 2 days for one. And when I got in the car, I'd always, because I'm a bit middle class and I like Radio 4, I always felt like I'd slightly failed if the Today programme had started, because that wasn't a really early start.
True.
Bit of Farming Today. If a Farming Today was on, I thought, well, and if it was World Service before that, then you think, I really have beaten the early birds.
Do you remember the Reveille? That bit of music they used to play, we dropped it. That bit of music, it's quite British.
Yeah.
That was a wonderful part.
I'm everything Neil isn't. I don't have routine. I'm scared of routine. I don't want anything fixed in my life, really. I just want to be able to move around. I'm nomadic. But I do love, as Chris quite beautifully put it, thinking about the next morning's drive as I fall asleep, because I'm not very organized, but even I sometimes will sneak out to fill the car up to make sure I'm brimmed before I go.
Yeah,
or I might decide to leave the car a little bit empty because I want to be forced to stop early on to have that coffee in that place.
I've never done that.
Have that coffee.
Get the morning air.
That's nice.
And I have to say, one of the positions I took about hybrid vehicles that people gave me lots of shit for, which I really couldn't care about, is that I loved having a very high performance hybrid that could creep away, because I live in a city now. It could creep away quietly, and then when I wanted it to be noisy and fast is one of the best developments for me, because latterly I don't want to wake up at 4:30 and have my AMG wake up the entire street. I feel like a complete wanker. But I love creeping away. Just, it feels so covert, like sneaking away. Launching. And then I press the button and then we go.
Yeah, like the Cadillacs pulling away at Le Mans.
Exactly.
I love the idea that Chris's sort of real profession was being a getaway driver. That's what you really want to do.
It. I think
rob a bank at dawn.
But there's also a sense of, I think I use the word privilege again, of a very early morning drive. Two things for me. One, the sense of emptiness. This planet is nicer for me when I'm not surrounded by human beings and their detritus. I sometimes the hustle and bustle is great. The centre of Tokyo would be odd with no people in it. But when you drive around places that are normally full of people when they're empty because it's early in the morning, it does give you a different view of the world, which I find very pleasant. And I also just, there's something, it's slightly romantic. I just wake up and I think to myself, I'm painting a picture here of my day that I wouldn't do if I got up later.
No,
I think that Neil, you were in New York recently, and obviously that walking around a busy city with jet lag in the mornings is brilliant. Just to see,
nice, isn't it?
It is. I love it. Yeah.
I've been trying to. There's I thought even better than driving. Can you see that?
Oh God, that book is unbelievable.
Oh yeah.
So I just, when you put this question onto the group chat, I just thought about Geoffrey Whelan. So for people who don't know him, he was a Second World War fighter pilot, flew Spitfires for 92 Squadron, and actually had 10 confirmed victories in the Battle of Britain, making him an ace. But it's the most spiritual book, and First Light is absolutely its title. I mean, I spent an hour this morning trying to find the bloody quote, and I couldn't find it. But his description, that there's so much death, there's so much destruction. His losses are so personal because these boys knew each other so well, and he's so young, and yet the most beautiful, not as Neil would say, optimistic slant on the whole of the Battle of Britain, the whole of the Second World War, is his description of flying at first light. And he just describes the fact that you get above the cloud cover, and it really doesn't matter how early you go up, but the earlier the better. And then you see the first sun. And he actually says it is like you just feel God is with you. Yeah. And I know we don't do God on this show, as Alistair Campbell famously said, but I totally get that, and there is something. My earliest experiences of early morning drives were when we used to go to India to visit family. So it was the long drive for the morning flight to Heathrow Airport. And it was exactly as you describe it, all the packing done the night before by my mum, the taxi coming very, very early. From Basingstoke, it was either the M3 or the M4. And it was just the most extraordinary thing just to see light come up. You get to Heathrow Airport, and there's all of this adventure ahead of you. And it's the most beautiful time.
There's something, I'm just thinking as you're saying that. I'm one of those people that thinks being on time is late.
Same.
Being late is really, really rude. And therefore absolutely being early is on time. It is the time of the day and the set of circumstances where there is a reward for being early. It's just even better.
Manish, in that book, I'm going to misquote this, but I do remember a lovely sequence where he's describing how that really big character that ends up the one that crash lands and ends up getting drunk in the orchard. When he says, Jerry at 5 o'clock, and I do believe he is bent on mischief.
Yeah.
It's brilliant. It's a brilliant.
He was still
I
around
need you to
until
read me that book at some
17,
point.
18.
He was. He was. I think he's only died 6-7 years ago.
Neil, I tell you what, just get for that one. Honestly, just the audio book. They made it. They made it into a TV series, and the TV series for me didn't do it. They had to stick in their love interest and everything. But listen to the audio book because I have, and it's beautiful.
I will definitely 100%.
So I think we've covered that, guys. I'm now on the fly going to get rid of the next subject because we've gone on. We're up to an hour now. And I think I'm going to go straight on to.
Are we going to come back to that another time though? Because
I
needed to tell you, I need something firm to the touch and stiff to the tug.
Okay,
but we'll come back to that.
No. We were going to do hitching. We were going to do a favourite hitching stories. We're not going to do that, but we are going to do the next thing, which you've now totally blown my cover with, which is the thorny issue of column stalks. I want to ask something I've never asked before, which is, Edward Lovett, what's your favourite column stalk?
Well, as I said, I've written down here, I want something solid to the touch and firm to the tug. And whilst looking at the different options, it was very difficult to do the research on this because most of them are very limp, and so I think it's got to be German.
Ooh, matron.
Yeah, it's got to be German. And I have to go back to a Z8 again, which looking at some photos and deciding on.
That's a nice
one. It's got to be aesthetically pleasing as well.
That's a good one.
BMW did such a wonderful job with the interior and the exterior of the Z8.
Yeah,
I'm going to decide. I'm going to choose the Z8.
Okay, Neil Clifford. Now I reckon you're going to be good on this because you've got some older cars, and I think you might agree that it's a science or it's an art form that's been forgotten in the modern car, whereas older cars took more pride in their stalk work.
Well, I'm going to be contrary here.
Oh no!
Oh,
is it a stalk?
No.
Oh, come on.
Okay, look, I've
got RTQ.
It's up here somewhere.
It's not like me to have two, but I'd like to do two. And I'll give you the picture of one so we can put it on there. The Bristol 400, which was basically a 328 BMW post-war. The Bristol 400 doesn't have an indicator stalk, but it has. Well, maybe one could call it a stalk. It's a little twisty knob on the dash in the middle. And it is, to use Manish's word, the most beautiful thing. Because it's very elegant. I think it's made out of what's a Bakelite? It's this beautiful Bakelite switch that is completely inconvenient because it's right in the middle of the dash. But it obviously doesn't self-correct, and if you're slightly deaf like me, it can be on for hours. But you just flick this little thing, and my daughter. I almost broke down in it on Sunday because I took her for a drive and the brakes stuck on, and then it was the tick over was about 3,000 revs and it was overheating fucking thing. But she's like, oh my God, I love that indicator. So I've got a 1948 indicator Bakelite knob as opposed to the stalk. And
then it's going to make your life difficult when I ask what's your favourite knob next week. Get on to that.
My other one, to be even more contrary, is not a indicator stalk. What is actually my favorite use of an indicator to put your indicators on? It actually pains me to admit, because I'm being completely converse to my original steering wheel discussion, is the 458 button. That button. You know what? Indicator buttons on the steering wheel actually bloody work.
They do.
That really bloody works, that thing, because you've got your steering and your hands in the right place on the steering wheel, and your little thumbs operate this thing, and it feels so natural. It feels so natural that the indicators should be there. And I'm in that car today, and I was thinking about at 4:47 in the morning about indicator buttons and stalks and knobs. And I thought, actually, I'm going to talk about that because it's bloody great.
You're halfway to being a racing driver now. You are, because that's exactly right.
I'm definitely halfway. I think I've done the easy bit.
I think, no, you've done the hard bit. You've done the hard bit.
Manage, can I ask you, which of your one cars you've owned has your favourite indicator stalk?
You didn't say in the question you had to own it.
No, that's true. That is true. Yeah.
That is true.
Well,
Go ahead.
Because if you prefixed every single week with that, can you imagine how short my contribution to it be? So, someone I know has a very, very beautiful Mercedes 300 SL. And it's so beautiful. And have you ever seen the stalks on one of those? They are exactly 3 o'clock, 9 o'clock, beautifully chrome, and the tips match the steering wheels. And they are just so perfectly weighted.
Yeah.
It's perfection. And you know, the way that the steering wheel works anyway, it's sort of 2-spoke. So I think they're basically 4 o'clock and 8 o'clock, aren't they? The actual spokes on the steering wheel. So you see these gorgeous column stalks on either side.
They are lovely.
Either ones. And I think you could probably just tap them very nice. Just catch them with your thumb.
Just catch them with your hand there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the word is fidelity. Fidelity. So yesterday evening, so I was discussing this yesterday with my son Finley. So Finley and I, he was down in Cornwall with me just yesterday. So we potted up to My Lawn Marina yesterday evening, and we had a lovely early evening supper at Castaways, which is a little restaurant on the side of the harbour at My Lawn Marina. People in the area will know it's lovely, and we had a lovely time. It's always great. So I was talking about this, and I said, what do you think about best column stalks? And he said, Dad, it's all about fidelity. And I thought, that's a fantastic word. So fidelity, I mean, it means trust and honesty and loyalty. It's why, Fido, the Latin word for dog, is about trustworthiness and loyalty and so forth. In other words, when we're using these controls, does it feel authentic and reliable, and does it give us confidence? So when I thought about the word fidelity, courtesy of Finley, I completely ignored the question and went on to haptic controls, which I bloody hate. Haptic controls I bloody hate.
Shit.
Because there's no fidelity.
How much wine did you have at this meal? Because you're already not answering the question.
No, well, if you learn anything, Chris, from me, it's that, there's always a more interesting question I could think of, and I can't think of an answer to your question. So haptic controls, if trafficators, Neil was talking about trafficators. You remember the Morris Minor and cars of that era? They were called trafficators.
Good idea.
So haptic controls I don't like haptic controls.
No.
And one day, I won't go any further now, but one day we do need to talk about the demise of the knob and the switch and the stalk in the modern motor vehicle. The next Range Rover, there's a new check Range Rover out now. They're going to do a refresh over the summer for the 24 model year. It's going to have no dials or controls at all.
Awful.
It's all going to be through that sort of Poundland Tesla screen thing they put in the new Range Rover. So even changing the seat temperature or whatever, all been dialed. So
does someone want to tell car manufacturers, Chris, that we did this in the 70s and they were called digital watches, and they lasted about 5 minutes? They're just shit.
So I think, but to answer the question, because I know there is a question in somewhere that I've done very well in avoiding, I quite like that singular 3D multifunctional, multivariate, whatever it is, Mercedes.
Yeah, they're good.
Where you can do everything with it. And I remember my fondest memories are from that E280 estate, Chris, that you used to have about when we used to go to Germany in it. It had the Brabus chip.
Oh, that was a 320 CDI. Good.
320 CDI.
Yeah.
214.
That just big, but it did everything. So that had fidelity. That would be my choice.
Okay, I've on my list here. That's down there. The classic Merc stalk that did everything that's when Mercedes had radically different solutions to everyone else. Actually, you had a single wiper. You had that single knob, the single lever, which was brilliant. I've done a little bit. I've got several here. The Citroen Visa that had the kind of pod by the side of plastic Coke can thing that had shit on it that you couldn't see. Just looked so French and cool. That was just Blade Runner in a car for me. That was just fantastic. I absolutely loved what Peter Wheeler tried to do with the TVR stuff of the time, when he went slightly wild, and he almost got to the indicator on the steering wheel before Ferrari. If TVR had survived, he was putting a lot of controls around there.
He was,
two air vents.
Made it work.
Yeah, I know, they did have an aluminium column stalk
lovely aluminium.
That actually, I've forgotten that.
Had a lovely movement to it.
That one, yeah,
had a lovely movement to it. Well, I've got a couple I think that stand out for me. One is, and you'll think I'm mad, the Vauxhall Cavalier that came out in the late 80s, which was actually the GM 2900 platform for those of us that are geeks. This is the more bar of soap Cavalier that was end of the 80s. It was the first car that Vauxhall had that had the generic column stalks that had the sort of rubber boot on the inside. It was a sort of corrugated boot.
It was the same as a Calibra.
Yes, they felt so high quality compared to any other ordinary car. I used to get in the car, and because it's something you're using the whole time, it made me feel the car was better built than it was, because I was constantly in contact with these two little levers that were beautifully damped. They had a rubber boot on the inside. In a Ford, they felt like shite.
Yeah.
But in a Vauxhall, and of course they ended up on the Elise as well, those did. They were used by lots of cars. And I always felt sorry for manufacturers that inherited the Ford bits, because they had to have the column stalks, which is why all Astons from that era feel like shite, because they've got those awful column stalks.
Yeah.
But for me, BMW E39, BMW top of its game then. The E39 column stalks have a movement to them.
Yeah.
But just when they get into the detent, when they're on or off, you can just, when you're that in contact and in touch with the car, there's a joy in just knowing, that lever's about to get into its notch.
Yes.
And I can't say that without coming across as an absolute wrong-un, but that is a quasi-sexual experience for me. So
you're an absolute wrong-un.
Yeah.
It is, but I just love the way they...
That's what I was talking about, the Germanness, the firmness.
But I love the fact that some bloke called Fritz, who lives near Munich, spent half his life making that work the way it did, and I want to thank him for it now publicly, because
who did he fancy, and what did she look like, Chris?
I don't know. I'd like to think she looked like Mila Kunis, and they're living together now. But there's something about the way those things move, and the joy that went into someone really cared about their job that day.
I think in the year 3000, when there's a museum about petrol cars, and you walk into the section called Saloon, it's the E39 M5.
Oh, but that's car. That's peak. It's peak motor car.
Yeah.
But if I had a car company which would go bust immediately, the one thing I would do is I would just throw money at stuff that you're constantly in contact with, or you see the whole time. I don't understand why Ford thought it was okay to have those shit column stalks, or that Aston Martin didn't think, well, let's just take the insides of it and recover it. Because if you're touching that stuff every couple of minutes.
I think soon enough, we will be able to have someone, a digital artist, be able to put together our perfect car with all these different things we're covering here.
It's the
tailpipe, steering wheels,
I'm going E39 5 Series, right? So we're now going to tweak a familiar theme. Every week on the Collecting Addicts Podcast, we throw open to the floor a question that we ask about cars. It's called our two-car garage, but we've actually got something different this time, which is called the two-driver garage. And I've just realised, in the mayhem of my life, that I got a new iPhone yesterday, and I haven't got it written down because my new phone hasn't updated. So give me 2 seconds.
Read it for you.
Yeah, can you read it out, please, Mr. C?
Yeah. The two-driver garage. You have inadvertently become the team principal of a well-known Formula One team based in northern Italy. It paints its cars red. But your first move is to resolve drivers. You have two drivers, but despite liking the incumbents, you have this nagging fear that they might not win much going forwards. Your budget is unlimited, but all applicants must be able to spell the word tortellini, not tortelloni, we'll come back to that, tortellini correctly.
So there you go. And I hasten to add that there are rules here, and the rules are that there are no rules. Neil Clifford.
Right, I've decided that I'm going to choose the two drivers of Formula One cars that I've met and they are world champions, ex-world champions. One sadly has passed away. One is unsadly, beautifully alive. So I'm also recruiting a team manager as well, and there's only one person for that, which I'll come to. So we're having Jackie Stewart. If anyone's seen that Stewart movie, I adore him. I adore his story. He never made a mistake. The most gorgeous man, has a bit of dyslexia like me, so I adore him for that. So I'd have Jackie Stewart. I'd have Luca de Montezemolo, by the way, as the team manager. You've got to have an Italian, because Italians only really like to work for other Italians. If you've ever tried to work in Italy, forget it. You have no fucking chance running an Italian company unless you are Italian. So I would definitely have Luca, and then I would have John Surtees, the man that, even though, you know, and I've spoken to him about this, when I met him, I spoke to him about this, was sort of pissed off that he ended up falling out with Enzo. He wanted to stay at Ferrari, but he's a very forthright, strong-willed, stubborn man. But he wished he'd have stayed at Ferrari. He'd have won more world championships. So I'd bring back John Surtees. I'd have Jackie Stewart there as the man that can engineer the car and not make mistakes, and I'd put Luca in charge of the whole thing, and we would win championship after championship.
You changed your selection from your message earlier on.
I did.
He's allowed to do that.
He's allowed to do that, Edward.
I know he did, but I called it.
You change your mind on stuff about 4 times a minute.
I did. No, I did. I wanted to do the guys that I'd met, and I was happy with my new choice. Yeah,
that's a lovely
solid.
Okay, I'm going to go next because I think I can nominate myself to do that. Now, this won't look like the most rational choice or set of choices, and it might look like I'm not taking the subject seriously, so I'm going to get told off. So, for me, I think we're all fascinated by sports people that passed away before we were really conscious of what the sport was, or we were fans of it. So I have to have Jim Clark. Because the number of people that answer who's the greatest and say Jim Clark, I can't ignore. Even great racing drivers say that Jim Clark was the greatest. So I kind of want him in my team because I want to see what Jim Clark's about. I want to see him drive. I want to see him beat people. And I think he will. But because I've got someone I think can beat everyone, I often feel that within motorsport, the codes don't cross enough. You know, I've just come from the Isle of Man where they've all ridden all sorts of things. They've all done motocross. They're sort of multi-discipline athletes, but quite often people get siloed in motorsport. And that's why it's absolutely obligatory that Francois Delacour makes his debut on a Formula One track, because God knows what's going to happen, but he's going to be fast. The sponsors are going to be over the moon because his off-track activities are going to be outrageous. He's going to give great interview. He's going to be the man. And the person that's going to run this team is, for me, the single most impressive engineer human being I've ever met is Norbert Singer of Porsche, who masterminded pretty much every single one of their Le Mans successes. This is a man that when Audi's data broke on a Le Mans car 10 years ago at Spa, they sent some pictures of the tyres, and he told them exactly what was going on by looking at the wear on the tyres. So he is just a mercurial genius. So for me, Clark, Delacour, Singer.
Oh,
wow.
I'm going to go Manish.
Well, because I'm a doctor and I have been studying a little bit about advanced genetics, I am going to clone Senna. And my 2-car garage is Senna and Senna. but with a little twist. So one of the Sennas is going to be 25.
Yep.
The other Senna is going to be 31.
Ooh.
And they're obviously going to be number 1 and number 2. At 25, I think he has all the speed that he needs. And at 31, I think he really is the best ever. And he's going to win. And the whole idea is that this is a team where if there is a mechanical or there's any kind of issue with Big Senna, Little Senna will win. This will get every pole position, this team, because one or the other Sennas is going to be on pole. The eldest Senna has got all the speed, I think, of the younger Senna, but I think probably is a little bit more cautious. So I think in a 16 race season, which is my sort of favorite number, I think it won't be 16-0. I think it'll be something like 10-6. And it could be either way. And I thought long and hard about the team manager when
it can only be one man. It can only be one man, Manish.
Well, you want it to be Ron Dennis.
It has to be, because Ronald did the job back in the day.
No. I'll tell you, I think you're wrong. And I'll tell you the team manager is it's Bernie Ecclestone.
Oh.
And Bernie is the only person on earth that little Senna and big Senna are not going to argue with. He's going to say, you get into that car. I know the engine's not very good. You're bloody number 2. Get in there. Drive. And that is what I think is going to do.
You're not trying to promote a particular body of work here, are you, Manish?
No, it's too late. It's too late. We're on to the next body of work. No, so it's Senna and Senna, and it's Bernie Ecclestone.
Ed would love it.
I've got a few here. I'm surprised you mentioned a name earlier on, Chris, and that's one of the names I've got written down here, which is Robert Kubica.
He deserves to come back.
Yeah,
he does. And he went off. He was pretty good at rallying, but he did like to shunt a car, didn't he?
Unfortunately, therein lies the problem.
My pair is Lewis Hamilton.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And Max Verstappen.
Oh.
And I'm going to give little Jean Todt the job to manage them.
That's a good team.
They'd be so fast for the first 3 races, and then there would be an homicide in a garage. So Chris Cooper,
you realise you do inherit their dads.
Well, that's true. Or I could do Anthony Hamilton and Jos Verstappen.
I mean, can you just imagine that garage?
So Chris Cooper, you go next, please.
Okay, so I sent a text last night to Phil and Cam, and I said, I read a question, and we had a big debate about the difference between tortellini and tortelloni.
Yeah.
And we all agreed we preferred tortellini because it's a meatier, slightly smaller, more delicate, but it's filled with meat rather than spinach or ricotta. So I think we're definitely on the right lines with tortellini. And the answer to the question was, name 2 drivers. The event eventually came out with Finley Cooper and Cameron Cooper. I said, that won't pass muster. I'm sorry, got to be faster than that. So Finley said, I'd have Adrian Newey as one of the drivers. 2 reasons. One, because the car will be faster eventually. And actually, Adrian's quite a good driver.
When he's not sticking it in the hedge, yeah.
No, he's quite good. He
did have an off on a green flag lap.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, but then so DC's done that, and Damon did that. And so anyway, so I'm not holding that against him. But actually, for once, I've actually answered the question properly. If you had to do it now, if it had to be this year, if this was for real, I'd have Fernando and Lando, not just because it's slightly alliterative, but actually I think Fernando and Lando would be a potent, entertaining, amusing, and effing fast combination.
Yeah.
I feel slightly completely ignored the boys then.
You've thought about it, and you've actually answered the question.
I have for once. Yeah. So Fernando and Lando, I think would be really interesting. I feel slightly sorry for Charles and Carlos.
Who's managing them, Chris?
Chris Cooper.
I think you. No, actually, the boys suggested that. I said
Nadine Dorries.
We're not going to do that.
Not fair.
We're not going to do that.
It's just not fair.
There was something really potent about how Jean Todt and Ross Brawn brought sense. Okay, they had Rory Byrne, those 3 with Michael. So I would say I would bring Jean and Ross in their pomp.
Neil, have you been?
He has.
Yeah,
you have been.
He's done his. Yeah,
he's done his. Sorry,
sorry. Yeah, sorry. I don't know where have I been. I don't know.
I'm too lost in the conversation.
Yes.
Right. So next up, a little bit of music, just to sprinkle a bit more joy on this hour and a half listening to 5 privileged men talk about expensive cars and motorsport. So music this week, we're going to start with Manish, who always enlightens us and makes us feel that we're not trying hard enough and that we've not listened to enough classical music. Manish, go.
I was thinking very hard about your First Light challenge, and I was imagining, there's a piece of music I listen to which is just on that very edge of meditation. It's a really, really, I suppose if you had to buttonhole it, you'd call it New Age, but it's written by Steve Jansen, who's David Sylvian's brother from Japan, and a woman called Maya Hershey. It's on the album Neither Present Nor Absent, and it's called Towards the Surface, and it is absolutely like hearing dawn.
Wonderful.
I'm just writing this down. I always write Manish's down because I've listened to them in the days after the podcast to pretend that some of his
making a difference
is rubbing off on me, but I'm still a thick fuck. I don't know why. Right, here we go. Neil Clifford.
I was really desperately trying to sort of move from the 90s into modern, and I had a look through my recently listened to music, and there sat right in the middle was a load of Pink Floyd songs, because I was lucky enough to go and see, not really Pink Floyd, is it? It's Roger Waters, but I've got a mate who's the manager, and he runs that whole thing. So I was lucky to go to Paris a couple of weeks ago and see that whole sort of crazy thing in Paris. And Wish You Were Here by Pink Floyd is one of those songs that you could sort of be happy driving over the cliff. It's such an amazing. So I've gone backwards, not forwards. I've gone from the 90s into the bloody 70s, but it's an amazing track, and it gets the hair on the back of your neck standing up for sure.
And
Neil, we'll never know this, but I suspect that 10% of the people that listen to this podcast will immediately go and listen to that song now.
Yes, it really is a special one.
Yeah.
And in that series about HMS Ark Royal, they use that piece of music to illustrate the two Phantom jets, Navy Phantoms, literally blasting past the Ark Royal at dawn.
I remember that.
This was the 70s Ark Royal.
That was the Rod Stewart sailing.
Exactly, had the Rod Stewart sailing to start with. My God, those Phantoms to Pink Floyd.
Yeah, I love an F4. I mean, we need to talk about aircraft, military aircraft.
We need to do aircraft. Yeah.
We're in.
Okay. Edward Lovett, have you chosen music this week, or are you going to tell us that you've not listened to anything?
No, I've been listening. I've been listening to music, and I did see some. I guess, is it The Weekend? He's playing up in Manchester at the moment.
He's a talent, isn't he?
I saw some footage of that last night. It looked amazing. Anyway, I haven't chosen him. I've gone with The Killers this week, and Somebody Told Me.
Oh, it's a good tune.
Yeah, that is good, actually.
I'm going to see Harry Styles tomorrow, so I'm sure I'll be doing a bit of Harry Styles next week.
Yeah, you need to do a bit of Harry next week.
I like pop songists. I think they're clever people.
He's
Chris
good.
Cooper.
Talking of pop songs, last week I did Huey Lewis and The Power of Love. And for some reason, it's bloody TikTok, whatever, on here came Frankie Goes to Hollywood, The Power of Love. And it got me thinking about Frankie Goes to Hollywood. We're extraordinary poets and storytellers in that mid-late 80s period where we all thought the world was coming to an end because, the Two Tribes, Welcome to the Pleasure Dome, Relax.
Pleasure Dome erect.
Yes.
Sean.
In Kubla Khan did Xanadu. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Or Xanadu.
I mean, that's a top album.
It's a brilliant album. So, but Power of Love, I think, is just an extraordinary. Holly Johnson's voice he's still around. I mean, if you'd have said in that late 80s, early 90s period when we thought AIDS was going to consume the world, name one person who won't make it, most people would have named him. He's still around, bless him.
That was one of the moments. Then the first Top of the Pops with Frankie Goes to Hollywood. That was like.
So I would say.
Do you remember? Mary Whitehouse? Do you remember that video was for Relax was a little racy, and I remember Mary Whitehouse coming on TV going, "Oh, it's disgusting. It shouldn't be allowed." And Mike Reed, the Radio 1 DJ, "Oh, it's disgusting. Shouldn't he banned it?" No, but what was great was somebody said to Mary Whitehouse, what about Duran Duran? She said, I won't have you sullying the name of those lovely boys. And then somebody showed her the Girls on Film video, which basically had the entire cast of men only. It was just unbelievable.
Yeah. So Frankie Goes to Hollywood.
That's
Thank you,
good.
Holly. Power of Love.
Wonderful.
Right. So that leaves me. I was driving in my M5 late at night last week. Now, we talked about early morning drives, but songs that you cruise around very late doors, and actually for different reasons, there are a few people around, but it's dark. And the interior lighting of the car looks fantastic, and the greens are really green and the red's really red, and there's that lovely BMW red floodlighting that's coming down on the center console. And for me, there's only one tune that I want to cruise to slowly, and that's Warren G's Regulate, which I just absolutely adore. I think it's a fantastic piece of music. And it makes all of us think we're a bit like gangsters when actually we're just middle class and we're quite ordinary. But the idea of they took my rings, they took my Rolex. I love it. I'm a massive fan of the lyrics of the song, and I think it's beautifully produced as well. So there you go.
Yeah, lovely.
We must play that to Bernie, Chris. If they took my rings, they don't know, like they're hanging upside down from a meat hook somewhere.
So that has dragged on a bit, people. Enjoy the sunshine this weekend. If you go to the Scramble, go in something quirky, and make sure that you go up to someone who owns a car that you don't like and ask them to explain why they like it and see if they can change your mind. Have a great weekend.
We've got just one thing. We've got the Porsche sale ending this Sunday, the 18th. Ending times from 3:30 p.m. We've got 70 Porsches ending.
Wow.
Go check it out. Have a bid.
Cheers, boys.
Take care. Bye.